Welcome to Juliet Kitchen with Chef Yasmin. In today's video, I'll demystify what risotto really is and I'll share my recipe on how to make it perfectly every time. Risottos are perfectly cooked when they're rich, creamy, with an afterbite, or technically speaking, al dente. The first step in making risotto perfectly is using hot liquid like chicken or vegetable broth or stock, or even water. For aromatics and flavor, I'm using finely minced garlic, finely minced shallot, as well as finely minced parsley. These aromatics you can vary depending on your taste. For example, you can use onions, or you can use tarragon, or whatever type of herbs you like. Here's a little fun fact for you. Did you know that the first identifiable risotto dates back to 1809, and the version included saffron broth that was added gradually to sautéed rice in butter, sausage, bone marrow, and onions. Okay, back to talking about how to make the perfect risotto. When making risotto, it's really important to choose the correct grain. A short, starchy texture grain is important. The two most popular grains used are arborio, which is the one I typically use, or carnaroli. I've never used the carnaroli, but people that use it swear by it that you're never able to mess up the texture of the risotto. But I also swear with my arboro rice. Risotto is generally referred to as a creamy Italian rice dish. Technically speaking, risotto is the process used to create the creaminess of the rice. Most of the time, cheese is added to the dish to make it extra creamy, but I know some places in America uses actual cream to add another level of creaminess. Personally, I don't like the ones with the cream, but I always use the cheese. Risottos could also be made without the cream or cheese. While the stock is heating up, I saute the shallots in butter. You could use whatever fat you like. 2 minutes or so before adding the garlic, and cook for 30 seconds. Add in the arboro rice. Be sure not to rinse it because you want all that starch in there to make it starchy. Season with about 1/4 teaspoon salt. Stir and cook for about 2 minutes. The shallots might get a little brown, but that's okay. Be sure it doesn't burn. I like to use white wine. I'm using about 3/4 cups of white wine. And here it's really important to stir like your life depends on it until that wine is just about evaporated into the rice. You'll be able to see the starchiness starting to form at this early stage. Starting with the addition of the white wine, this risotto now requires constant care to get that texture just perfect and the creaminess as well. The more you stir, the creamier it gets. I'm using a risotto spoon here so that it's gentle on the rice, but you could also use a rubber spatula. Once the wine has absorbed into the rice, begin adding the hot liquid. I use a 1 cup ladle, but you could also use a measuring cup. And again, stir like your life depends on it, and each time working it until the rice has absorbed all of the liquid, or almost all of the liquid. Unlike rice recipes that call for a 2-to-1 liquid to rice ratio, when making risotto, you need a lot more of liquid. I use 1 cup of the arboro rice to 5.5 cups of stock or whatever liquid I'm using, as well as additional 3/4 cups of the white wine. In the end, some of the liquid might remain a small amount. Don't worry, because the amount of liquid that you're actually going to end up using will depend on how high your flame is. I typically use medium flame, but if it's not set correctly, you may use all of the liquid. But the 5.5 cups will work perfectly. At this stage, I've added 2 cups of the hot liquid, and as you notice, I'm stirring constantly. It's this consistent stirring that helps to release the most starch from the arboro so that it coagulates with the liquid. It's about 10 minutes of cooking since I first added the wine, so I'm adding in a little bit of my flavoring, about a teaspoon of the fresh minced parsley and a quarter of my freshly grated cheese. I typically use 3/4 to 1 cups of cheese. You can adjust that based on how creamy and how much cheesiness you want in the recipe. You can see how creamy the mixture has become, and the rice is starting to plump up quite a bit. I'm at the stage of adding my 1/3 cup of hot liquid. Note, please be sure to keep the liquid hot, because if it gets cooled at any time, it's going to slow up the process and your risotto will come out mushy. You'll also start to notice by the 1/3 cup of additional liquid, the absorption rate is much slower. Feel free to adjust the flame on the stove a little bit higher, but be careful not to make it too high. You'll notice well into the 1/3 cup of liquid added that the mixture is very creamy and the rice is still a little bit too grainy. Now that the 1/3 cup of liquid is just about almost absorbed, it's time to add a 1/4 cup of liquid and continue the process of constantly mixing or stirring. Don't forget to give the video a like, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel as yet, please be generous and hit that subscription button and the notification bell so that you get notified whenever I post a new video. And thank you if you're a subscriber. I usually like to serve this recipe with grilled or pan-fried shrimp. Stay till the end of the video and you'll get the delicious recipe for my pan-fried shrimp. The grain is starting to look almost done. I'm adding in another cup of liquid and of course stir as often as possible during this stage. This risotto is looking really good and it smells amazing. Here I'm going to add in another 1/4 of my cheese. Wow, this grain is looking incredible. At this stage, the remaining 1/2 cup of liquid will be added in gradually as needed. Once the remaining cheese is added, the risotto will thicken. Now that the rice is very creamy and has the perfect al dente texture for me, I'm adding in organic baby spinach. You can add whatever vegetables you prefer here. I like the baby organic spinach because it wilts very quickly, and I just simply stir to incorporate it into the hot mixture. The heat will wilt the spinach. It takes 2 to 3 minutes to fully wilt the spinach. I add in some additional fresh parsley, the remaining cheese, and stir to incorporate and melt the cheese. Look how beautiful this is. Nice and creamy. I like to finish with some butter, and this is a personal preference. The perfect risotto ends up as creamy with an al dente texture, and then the grains should still be separated, not sticking together. Risotto is best served while it's very hot. It will thicken as it cools down. Wow, so perfect. I like to serve this recipe with my pan-fried or grilled shrimp. Stay tuned, the recipe is coming up. For the shrimp recipe, I'm using 1 pound of colossal shrimp. These are very huge, so they're usually about 14 to 15 shrimps in a pound. And unfortunately, these shrimps did not come peeled and deveined, which is okay because I love to reserve the shrimp shells to make shrimp stock. You could check out my shrimp stock recipe. I'll leave the link in the description. So I peel my shrimp, devein them, make sure they're washed very clean, and then I simply season the shrimp with a little bit of harissa, fresh ground black pepper, salt, and some ground cumin. I like to use a cast iron pan to pan fry these shrimps, but you could also use a stainless steel skillet. I add about a tablespoon of ghee to the non-stick pan, and you want to make sure the pan is hot. Add in the shrimps in a single layer, and these shrimps I cook for about 2 minutes on each side and flip them onto the sides if necessary to cook for about a minute. Remove the shrimps and serve with the risotto while it's all still very hot. Not only does this dish look amazingly rich, creamy, it smells delicious, it looks appetizing, and it tastes even better. Feel free to top with more fresh parsley and fresh cheese as well. All of the ingredients are listed in the description box. And please, if you do make it, leave me a comment. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this yummy, yummy recipes. Until next time, happy cooking.